Imagine walking into your office tomorrow morning, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, the coffee machine sputtering in the corner, and your team sitting at their desks, silent, disengaged, waiting for the clock to tick forward, their eyes glazed over with the dull ache of routine, their spirits drained by the monotony of tasks that feel meaningless. And you realize in that moment that you are not leading a team, you are presiding over a slow erosion of human potential. But then picture a different scene, where you walk in and the room is alive, conversations buzz with energy, ideas fly across the table, people are smiling, leaning in, eager to contribute. They're not just working, they're building something bigger than themselves. And that is the difference between a workplace that drains life and one that inspires greatness. And that is the journey we are about to take together through Matt Tenney's Inspire Greatness, a book that is not about gimmicks or quick fixes, but about a repeatable framework that transforms disengaged employees into motivated, purpose-driven contributors. Because the modern workplace is broken. Gallup surveys show nearly 70% of employees in the U.S. are disengaged. Productivity is stagnant. Burnout is rampant. Turnover costs companies billions, and leaders struggle to motivate their teams, often resorting to short-term fixes like bonuses, perks, or fear-driven management. But here's the truth. You can't buy greatness. You have to inspire it. And Tenney's framework is built on timeless principles: clarity of purpose, empathy and leadership, consistency of action, stories and symbols, and repeatability. And when leaders embrace these, they ignite a fire that spreads across their teams, transforming ordinary tasks into extraordinary missions. Just like Howard Schultz did at Starbucks when he told stories of his childhood and the warmth of a neighborhood cafe, turning baristas into ambassadors of connection, proving that inspired leadership transforms not just companies, but lives. And here's the punchline. Greatness isn't reserved for the few. It's repeatable, it's teachable, and it starts with you. Whether you're a leader, a manager, or simply someone who wants to inspire the people around you, this book is your blueprint. And in this cinematic series, we will break it down part by part, weaving together problem, solution, real-life example, and punchline, until you not only understand the framework, but feel it in your bones, ready to lead with greatness, ready to transform disengagement into passion, ready to turn survival into thriving. Because this is not just a summary, it is a wake-up call, a rallying cry, a cinematic journey into the heart of leadership. And by the end of this series, you will not only know how to inspire greatness, you will embody it.
Every great movement begins with clarity of purpose, because without a clear and compelling why, even the most talented teams drift into confusion, disengagement, and mediocrity. And in the American workplace today, this lack of purpose is the silent killer of motivation, with employees showing up physically but checking out mentally, waiting for the weekend, waiting for retirement, waiting for something that feels meaningful. And here's the problem. Leaders often assume that a paycheck is enough, that perks will suffice, that vague mission statements plastered on walls will inspire action. But the truth is that human beings crave significance. They want to know that their work matters, that their effort contributes to something larger than themselves. And when leaders fail to provide that clarity, they rob their teams of the very fuel that drives greatness. So the solution begins with defining and communicating a crystal-clear purpose, one that resonates emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. And Matt Tenney insists that this is not optional, it is foundational. Because when people understand the why, they will endure the how, they will push through obstacles, they will innovate, they will sacrifice, they will rise. And history proves this. Think of Martin Luther King Jr., who did not inspire millions by presenting a 10-point plan. He inspired them by declaring, "I have a dream," a vision so clear and compelling that it ignited hearts across America. Or consider Steve Jobs, who didn't just sell computers, he sold the idea of empowering individuals to change the world through technology. And that clarity of purpose transformed Apple from a garage startup into a global icon. And in your own leadership journey, clarity of purpose means asking hard questions. Why does your team exist? What impact do you want to make? How does each person's role connect to that larger mission? And when you answer those questions with honesty and passion, you give your people a reason to care, a reason to fight, a reason to stay. And here's the punchline. Clarity of purpose is not a luxury. It is the oxygen of greatness. Without it, your team suffocates. With it, they breathe life into every project, every meeting, every challenge. And as you listen to this cinematic commentary, let it sink in that your job as a leader is not just to assign tasks, it is to awaken purpose. Because when you awaken purpose, you awaken greatness. If clarity of purpose is the oxygen of greatness, then empathy and leadership is the heartbeat. Because without empathy, leadership becomes mechanical, transactional, and ultimately hollow. And here lies the problem. Too many leaders in America confuse authority with influence. They believe that issuing commands and enforcing rules will inspire loyalty. But what it actually breeds is resentment, disengagement, and quiet quitting. And the truth is that human beings are not machines to be programmed. They are souls to be understood. And when leaders fail to connect with the human side of their teams, they miss the very essence of motivation. So the solution begins with empathy, real, authentic empathy that listens before speaking, that seeks to understand before being understood, that values the person before the performance. And Matt Tenney argues that empathy is not weakness, it is strength, because when employees feel seen, heard, and valued, they give more than compliance, they give commitment. And history proves this. Think of Abraham Lincoln, who during the Civil War would spend hours visiting soldiers in their camps, listening to their fears, sharing their burdens, and that empathy forged loyalty that no order could command. Or consider Satya Nadella at Microsoft, who transformed the company's culture by leading with empathy, encouraging collaboration, and reminding employees that their work was about empowering others. And the results were staggering. Innovation soared, morale improved, and Microsoft reclaimed its place as a leader in technology. And in your own journey, empathy means asking yourself, do I know my team beyond their job titles? Do I understand their struggles, their dreams, their fears? And when you take the time to connect, you unlock a reservoir of motivation that no paycheck can buy. And here's the punchline. Empathy is not a soft skill, it is a leadership superpower. It is the force that turns managers into mentors, bosses into builders, and workplaces into communities. And as you absorb this cinematic commentary, let it echo in your heart that greatness is not achieved by commanding people to move. It is achieved by inspiring them to feel. Because when people feel valued, they will move mountains.
Clarity of purpose gives direction, and empathy gives connection. But without consistency of action, leadership collapses into empty words. Because here's the problem. Too many leaders deliver inspiring speeches, launch bold initiatives, and then vanish into inconsistency, leaving their teams confused, skeptical, and ultimately disengaged. And in the American workplace, this inconsistency is rampant. Leaders say one thing in meetings and do another in practice. They preach values but cut corners. They promise support but fail to show up. And employees notice. They always notice. Because trust is built not on words but on repeated actions. So the solution is simple yet demanding. Consistency, the daily discipline of aligning what you say with what you do, of showing up again and again until your people believe not just in your vision, but in your integrity. And Matt Tenney emphasizes that greatness is not achieved through occasional bursts of inspiration, but through the relentless rhythm of consistent leadership. And history proves this. Think of John Wooden, the legendary UCLA basketball coach, who didn't just talk about discipline and excellence, he lived it every day, teaching his players how to tie their shoes properly, insisting on fundamentals, modeling consistency until his teams became dynasties.
Or consider Warren Buffett, whose consistent investment philosophy over decades built not just wealth, but trust, because people knew he would not waver. And in your own journey, consistency means asking yourself, do my actions match my words? Do my people see me living the values I preach? Do I show up when it's hard? And when you answer yes, you create a culture of trust. And trust is the soil in which greatness grows. And here's the punchline. Consistency is the bridge between vision and reality. Without it, your leadership is a house of cards. With it, your leadership becomes a fortress. And as you absorb this cinematic commentary, let it echo in your mind that greatness is not a one-time act. It is a lifetime of consistent action. Because when your people see you walk the talk day after day, they will follow you not out of obligation, but out of conviction.
If consistency of action builds trust, then stories and symbols ignite imagination. Because here's the problem. Facts and figures alone rarely inspire people to greatness. They inform, but they do not transform. And in the American workplace, leaders often bombard employees with charts, metrics, and spreadsheets, hoping that logic will spark motivation. But human beings are not wired to move by numbers. They are wired to move by narrative, by symbols that carry meaning, by stories that connect the heart to the mission. And when leaders fail to harness this truth, they leave their teams intellectually aware but emotionally detached. So the solution is to become a storyteller, a symbol maker, someone who translates vision into narrative and values into images. And Matt Tenney insists that leaders must master this art because stories bypass resistance and symbols anchor identity. And history proves this. Think of Winston Churchill, who during the darkest days of World War II didn't just present military strategies, he told stories of resilience. He painted vivid pictures of bulldog determination, and those narratives galvanized a nation. Or consider Nike, whose simple symbol, the swoosh, became more than a logo. It became a rallying cry for achievement, a symbol that told every athlete, just do it. And in your own leadership journey, stories and symbols mean asking yourself, what narratives define our mission? What symbols embody our values? How can I communicate in ways that stir emotion? And when you do this, you transform meetings into movements, tasks into tales of triumph, and workplaces into theaters of greatness. And here's the punchline. Stories and symbols are not decoration. They are the language of inspiration. They are the sparks that ignite the fire of purpose. And as you absorb this cinematic commentary, let it echo in your imagination that greatness is not achieved by data alone. It is achieved by narrative, by symbol, by the art of making people feel that they are part of something epic. Because when people see themselves in the story, they will fight to make it real.
If stories and symbols ignite imagination, then repeatability ensures that inspiration becomes a system instead of a one-time spark. Because here's the problem. Many leaders deliver powerful speeches, launch exciting initiatives, and create moments of motivation, but those moments fade, they are forgotten, and the culture slips back into disengagement. Because inspiration without repeatability is like fire without fuel. It burns bright for a moment and then dies out. And in the American workplace, this cycle is everywhere, with companies rolling out new programs that excite employees for a week, only to watch enthusiasm vanish by month's end. So the solution is to build a repeatable framework, a system that sustains motivation day after day, year after year. And Matt Tenney emphasizes that greatness is not about isolated events, but about creating processes that embed inspiration into the DNA of the organization. And history proves this. Think of Toyota, whose repeatable system of continuous improvement, known as Kaizen, transformed manufacturing worldwide. Because it wasn't a one-time initiative, it was a daily practice. Or consider the U.S. military, which doesn't rely on occasional bursts of motivation, but on repeatable rituals, training, and traditions that instill discipline and purpose across generations.
And in your own leadership journey, repeatability means asking yourself, how can I design rituals, routines, and systems that reinforce purpose, empathy, and consistency? How can I ensure that inspiration is not dependent on my presence, but embedded in the culture itself? And when you do this, you create momentum that doesn't fade. You build a legacy that lasts. And here's the punchline. Repeatability is the secret to sustainability. It is the mechanism that turns inspiration into transformation. And as you absorb this cinematic commentary, let it echo in your mind that greatness is not achieved by occasional sparks. It is achieved by building a fire that never goes out, a fire fueled by systems, rituals, and frameworks that repeat inspiration until it becomes second nature. Because when inspiration is repeatable, greatness is inevitable.
If repeatability builds systems that last, then the leader as a catalyst for change is the spark that ignites transformation. Because here's the problem. Organizations often stagnate, trapped in routines, weighed down by bureaucracy, and employees feel powerless to change the status quo, waiting for someone else to lead the way. But when leaders step into the role of catalyst, they disrupt inertia, they challenge complacency, they awaken possibility. And in the American workplace, this is desperately needed because too many companies cling to outdated models, too many managers settle for mediocrity, and too many employees resign themselves to disengagement. So the solution is for leaders to embrace their role as catalysts, to see themselves not just as administrators, but as agents of transformation. And Matt Tenney insists that leaders must embody this mindset, because when a leader models courage, curiosity, and commitment to change, the team follows. And history proves this. Think of Rosa Parks, whose single act of courage catalyzed a movement, or Elon Musk, who disrupted entire industries by refusing to accept limitations. And in your own leadership journey, being a catalyst means asking yourself, am I willing to challenge the status quo? Am I willing to risk discomfort for growth? Am I willing to ignite change even when it's unpopular? And when you answer yes, you become the spark that lights the fire of greatness. And here's the punchline. Leaders are not just managers of the present, they are architects of the future. They are catalysts who transform ordinary organizations into extraordinary movements. And as you absorb this cinematic commentary, let it echo in your spirit that greatness is not achieved by maintaining what is. It is achieved by catalyzing what could be. Because when you step into the role of catalyst, you don't just lead change, you become change. If the leader as catalyst sparks transformation, then building a culture of ownership ensures that transformation endures. Because here's the problem. Too many workplaces in America are plagued by passivity, with employees waiting for instructions, avoiding responsibility, and treating their jobs as obligations rather than opportunities. And this lack of ownership drains energy, stifles innovation, and leaves leaders carrying the entire weight of progress. But the truth is that greatness cannot be achieved by one person alone. It requires a culture where every individual feels like a stakeholder, where they see themselves not as cogs in a machine, but as co-creators of success. And when leaders fail to cultivate ownership, they create dependency. But when they succeed, they unleash empowerment. So the solution is to build a culture where accountability is celebrated, initiative is rewarded, and every voice matters. And Matt Tenney emphasizes that ownership is not about micromanagement, but about empowerment, about giving people the freedom to act and the responsibility to deliver. And history proves this. Think of Southwest Airlines, whose culture of ownership empowered employees at every level to make decisions that delighted customers and built loyalty. Or consider the U.S. Navy SEALs, where ownership is embedded so deeply that every member takes responsibility for the mission, regardless of rank. And in your own leadership journey, building ownership means asking yourself, do I trust my people enough to empower them? Do I create systems that encourage initiative? Do I celebrate accountability instead of punishing mistakes?
And when you answer yes, you create a culture where people don't just show up, they step up. And here's the punchline. Ownership is the engine of greatness. It transforms passive employees into active leaders. It turns workplaces into communities of accountability. And as you absorb this cinematic commentary, let it echo in your spirit that greatness is not achieved by telling people what to do. It is achieved by inspiring them to take ownership. Because when people own the mission, they will fight for it as if it were their own.
If ownership empowers people to step up, then recognition and celebration fuel their desire to keep going. Because here's the problem. In countless workplaces across America, employees pour their energy into projects. They sacrifice time, they innovate, they deliver results, and yet their efforts go unnoticed. Their contributions fade into silence, and over time, that silence becomes discouragement, disengagement, and eventually departure. Because human beings crave acknowledgement. They want to know that their work is seen, valued, and appreciated. And when leaders fail to recognize achievement, they starve motivation. But when they succeed, they multiply it. So the solution is simple yet profound. Build a culture of recognition and celebration, where victories are acknowledged, milestones are honored, and gratitude flows freely. And Matt Tenney emphasizes that recognition is not about empty praise or generic awards. It is about authentic acknowledgement that connects effort to impact. And history proves this. Think of the U.S. Olympic teams, where coaches celebrate not just medals, but the daily discipline of athletes, reinforcing that every step matters. Or consider companies like Zappos, whose culture of celebration turned customer service into a legendary experience because employees felt valued and motivated to go above and beyond. And in your own leadership journey, recognition means asking yourself, do I take time to notice the small wins? Do I celebrate progress as much as outcomes? Do I express gratitude in ways that feel personal and sincere? And when you answer yes, you create a culture where people don't just work for paychecks, they work for pride. And here's the punchline. Recognition is the fuel of greatness. It transforms effort into energy. It turns workplaces into arenas of celebration. And as you absorb this cinematic commentary, let it echo in your heart that greatness is not achieved by demanding more. It is achieved by appreciating more. Because when people feel celebrated, they will rise again and again to achieve the extraordinary. If recognition fuels motivation, then resilience ensures that motivation survives the storms. Because here's the problem. Every workplace, every leader, every team will face adversity, economic downturns, failed projects, unexpected crises. And in America today, adversity is everywhere, from industries disrupted by technology to employees struggling with burnout. And too often, leaders crumble under pressure, teams fracture, and organizations lose their way. But the truth is that greatness is not defined by how you perform when things are easy. It is defined by how you rise when things are hard. And resilience is the key. The ability to bend without breaking, to adapt without surrendering, to endure without losing hope. And Matt Tenney emphasizes that resilience is not just about survival, it is about transformation, because adversity is the forge in which greatness is shaped. And history proves this. Think of Thomas Edison, who failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb, yet each failure was fuel for resilience. Or consider Oprah Winfrey, who overcame poverty and trauma to build an empire of influence. And in your own leadership journey, resilience means asking yourself, how do I respond when plans collapse? How do I lead when morale is low? How do I inspire when hope seems lost? And when you choose resilience, you model strength for your team. You show them that setbacks are not endings, but beginnings. And here's the punchline. Resilience is the shield of greatness. It protects purpose. It sustains empathy. It reinforces consistency. It keeps the fire alive when the winds of adversity blow.
And as you absorb this cinematic commentary, let it echo in your spirit that greatness is not achieved by avoiding hardship, it is achieved by embracing it. Because when you lead with resilience, you don't just survive adversity, you transform it into triumph.
If resilience ensures survival through adversity, then legacy defines the impact that endures long after the leader is gone. Because here's the problem. Too many leaders in America focus only on short-term gains, quarterly reports, and immediate results, chasing numbers while neglecting the deeper question of what they will leave behind. And when leaders fail to think about legacy, they build organizations that crumble when they depart, cultures that fade when the spotlight shifts, and teams that lose direction when the guiding hand disappears. But the truth is that greatness is not measured by temporary success. It is measured by lasting influence, by the imprint you leave on people, by the culture that continues to thrive even in your absence. And the solution is to lead with legacy in mind, to ask not just what you can achieve today, but what you can build for tomorrow. And Matt Tenney emphasizes that legacy is not about monuments or fame. It is about impact, about shaping lives, about creating systems and values that endure. And history proves this. Think of Mother Teresa, whose legacy of compassion continues to inspire millions decades after her passing. Or consider Walt Disney, whose vision of imagination and joy still shapes generations long after he left this world. And in your own leadership journey, legacy means asking yourself, what values will my team carry forward? What culture will remain when I am gone? What stories will they tell about my leadership? And when you answer those questions with courage and clarity, you begin to build something that transcends time. And here's the punchline. Legacy is the crown of greatness. It is the measure of whether your leadership mattered. And as you absorb this cinematic commentary, let it echo in your soul that greatness is not achieved by what you accomplish alone. It is achieved by what you inspire others to continue. Because when you lead with legacy, you do not just change the present, you shape the future.
If legacy defines the impact that endures, then the call to action is the moment where inspiration becomes reality. Because here's the problem. Too many people consume motivational content, nod their heads, feel a spark, and then do nothing. They let the fire die before it ever lights their path. And in America today, millions of employees, leaders, and dreamers are waiting for change, but never acting, waiting for someone else to inspire them, waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. But the truth is that greatness is not achieved by waiting. It is achieved by acting, by stepping forward today, by choosing to lead with purpose, empathy, consistency, stories, repeatability, ownership, recognition, resilience, and legacy. And Matt Tenney's Inspire Greatness is not just a book, it is a blueprint, a cinematic rallying cry for leaders who refuse to settle for mediocrity. And now the responsibility is yours, because the solution is simple yet profound. Act now. Take these principles and apply them. Transform your workplace, ignite your team, and inspire greatness in every corner of your life. And history proves this. Think of every leader who dared to act, from Martin Luther King Jr. to Oprah Winfrey, from Abraham Lincoln to Elon Musk. They did not wait for permission. They did not wait for perfect conditions. They acted, and their action changed the world. And in your own journey, the call to action means asking yourself, will I step forward today? Will I embody these principles? Will I choose to inspire greatness? And when you answer yes, you begin a journey that will not only transform your team, but transform yourself. And here's the punchline. Greatness is not a concept. It is a choice. It is a call to action. And as you absorb this cinematic commentary, let it echo in your heart that the time is now, the leader is you, and the mission is clear. Inspire greatness today. Because when you act, you don't just change your workplace, you change the world. So like,
comment, share, subscribe, and if you want to dive deeper into this transformative framework, grab your copy of Inspire Greatness through the Amazon affiliate link in the description. Because this is not just a book, it is your wake-up call, your blueprint, your cinematic journey into the heart of leadership, and the future of greatness begins with you.